Hello and welcome to the Catalunya Championship show. I am your host, Mark Hill, on the Tour Junkies Network. This is the DP World Tour preview show for this week. We are heading to PGA Catalunya. Second week in a row, we're in Spain, and let's hope to build on last week, where we did have disappointment in the end. T3 finish for Aaron Cockrell, 125 to 1 shot. The Canadian led during the final day, double bogey roundabout the turn. Looked to put pay to his title credentials. He did bounce back though. Bogey or birdie streak followed, but ultimately the Spanish duo of Larrazabal and Otaegul pulled clear. This week we are staying in Spain, but the boys, DB, Pat, they've been busy. 7 videos I counted before I came on here, all around the Mexican Open. So they have been firing the videos out, everything from prize picks to course breakdowns, everything you want to know around the Mexican event this week. Get over to the YouTube channel and the podcast channels for those. Also, the Huntsville Championship from Ledges Golf Course. The kid, Gareth Simmons, he'll be dropping that for the Corn Ferry Tour preview show. I'm sure it will follow very, very shortly indeed. Garrett obviously landed some winners this year already on tour. I'm hoping to get that under my belt as well sooner rather than later. We're getting close. We've lost out on playoffs this year. We've had 125 to 1 shots running close last week. But this time around, we are going to try and improve and get some winners. So let's get into the course breakdown and have a look at where we're at this week. We are at the stadium course, PGA Catalunya. We remain in Spain. It's a par 72, 7,353 yards. Step up on distance from last week. It was a par 70. We're up to par 72 this week. 4 par 5s in play. Water in play as well on several of the holes, and 5 in total. Similar to last week's venue, where we've hosted a number of Q School events. Also, the Nordic Golf League has had residents here for a few years as well, including an event already in the calendar year. I think when I looked at it, it was only just one player possibly in this field, Pedro Oriol, the Spaniard, who actually performed quite well there and has some decent Q School credentials as well. Not a bad DFS shout this week for Pedro Oriol to have a look at him. Didn't make my betting card, mind you. Outside of that, though, we have seen it at DP World levels before. A couple of Spanish Open events held here in 2009 and 2014. So with that in mind, we do have some stats to draw upon. That's always useful and helpful. We're not going totally blind into the tournament. In terms of the stats, driving accuracy, greens and regulation to the fore, looking at previous winners, top 5 finishers. We're generally looking for a golfer who's dialed in with his irons. And as accurate player overall. I say water and play on a number, narrower than average fairways on the tour, or against the tour average as well. This was a venue that was being set up and sort of updated and redesigned with a Ryder Cup in mind. They got pipped to the post, the Spanish boys did, with the Italian entry securing the Ryder Cup next time around. But certainly one of those courses that is deemed highly and in good esteem within the Spanish golf course resume. We could look at Valderrama possibly as a comp course, tree-lined, classical in nature, similar vibes here. Not quite the same distance, but model factors overall for me this week. I've driving distance factored in, not as much as driving accuracy. That definitely took a premium. GIR, par 5 scoring. The previous winners here had definitely stood out in par 5 scoring, so that's definitely one I want to have a look at. Leaned on positive approach play too. I'm definitely looking for some semblance of form within the calendar year of 2022 as well. Weather last week did play a significant factor. We talked about it in terms of the draw bias. Now, what I probably overlooked when I was putting all my eggs in one basket in terms of the draw last week is that the weather delays ultimately led to a lot of the golfers ending up with more favorable draws or more favorable times that they were out on course compared to what their original scheduled time was. Didn't work against us when it came to Aaron Cockrell. He was obviously right in the mix, but it did bring some other golfers into play that perhaps I'd drawn a line through and maybe should have dug a bit deeper on. This time around, we're going to have a little bit of rain possibly factored in as well. The winds, though, significantly less. Overall conditions should be a lot firmer. They have a lot more control and ability to have this course playing fine-tuned and how they want it. Definitely expect it to be a relatively competitive sort of mid-teens score potentially on the board as well again this week. So Looking for accurate golfers, looking for par 5 scorers, looking for some semblance of form, and definitely looking for some course history. These Q School guys, even the Nordic Golf League, I'm not going to put my nose up at it. If they've had looks round here, I definitely think it's an advantage despite some of the course updates that have been put in place. Top of the betting board is headlined by Bernd Wiesberger at 22-1, with Adrian Otaegul then in at 25-1 off the back of his second place finish last week. Jordan Smith and Pablo Rathabal, last week's winner, in at 28-1. Rasmus Højgaard and Richard Bland round out the top of the betting board at 30-1. So with Bland and Jordan Smith joining the field this week, weren't in last week. Location forms put me off Smith. Recent form certainly stands out, as does the stats categories like par 5 scoring and accuracy. Miscut here in his only competitive outing, and a mixed bag of Spanish form overall is probably keeping me away from Smith. Blandy has to be respected. He can grind his way around this course and do relatively well. Bernd Wiesberger, I had seen him as big as 30-1 at the opening of the week. He seems to have been supported in on DraftKings Sportsbooks, where these odds come from. He's into 22-1 there now. Had a look at him definitely in DFS side of things, but not going to take him outright. But if he'd still been hanging around or floating around at that 30-1 price, couldn't have put you off. But recording this show on a Wednesday, a lot of that value has gone. Overall, Pablo Rathabal, you can't fault as well, 28-1. He could round out and perform well again. But I'm going to start my card with the guy he just pipped at the top of the leaderboard last week, and that's Adrian Otaegul. Obvious credentials for Otaegul here. Q School winner in 2015, 5th place in 2014 at the Open d'España as well. Spaniards in form, 3rd, 5th, and the runner-up last week. Not the longest of hitters. I know that we have a little bit more distance in play this time around, but definitely other factors that really stand out for Otaegul at 25-1. He's good accuracy numbers, amongst the hottest irons on tour, 2nd on approach last week, top 20 grades in 3 consecutive tournaments in terms of stroke gained approach. Putter can get hot. Ras Al Khaimah Championship stands out, where he's number 1 in the field on that occasion. And solid form in Spain overall, already a 3-time winner on the DP World Tour. So the combination of recent form, course history, and win equity, I think he'll look to go one better this week, and that's Adrian Otaegul at 25-1 to start out my card. We jump down then to 50-1, and Mikko Korhonen in the Finn is who I have my eyes on here. I faded him on occasion. If you're a regular viewer or listener to the show, you'll know that I have been on Korhonen before, but I've also faded him on a couple of occasions on DFS. He's always sitting in that 8K range, but this week I've seen enough to maybe have a little bit of equity in him when it comes to the outright card. Shown glimpses in recent weeks, including top 20 finish last time out at Tarragona. This could prove to be a similar test to Valderrama, given the tree line classical layout. And Korhonen has recorded a top 3 finish in recent years there in 2018. At the course itself, he has Q School wins to his name, a couple of rounds in the 65 on his way to his victory. Plenty of looks overall at the course, including another top 20 finish at the Open d'España in 2014. Outside of last week's T15 finish, Korhonen also has top 10 at the Stein City Championship. Stats-wise, he's around average in the field when it came to the par 5 scoring, but the accuracy numbers really do stand out, which should play a big part here, given we expect course management to be an important factor. He grades out 2nd in the field in accuracy off the tee, including 3rd for driving accuracy at the Abu Dhabi Championship, 7th for driving accuracy at Stein City, and 2nd for driving accuracy at Qatar Masters. So plenty to like in terms of ticking the box there. Also grades out 1st in GIR at Abu Dhabi as well. Inconsistent with the putter, but the approach game, it's consistent too. Top 20 ranks in 5 of the last 6 tournaments whenever he has me at the cut. Plenty to like about the Finn, given the course experience, recent green shoots as well in the form lines and stats. So my second selection at 50-1 is Mikko Korhonen. We drop down and we'll have a look at Fabrizio Zanotti then. Recent form is not going to jump off the page when it comes to Zanotti. Outside of a top 20 finish, that is, at the Dubai Desert Classic this year, where he opened up with around a 66 before fading down the stretch. But he is a consistent cut maker. We have to go back to May last year, and actually the tournament that we're following up with next week, which is the Betfred British Masters. That was the last time that Zanotti actually missed a cut in competitive tournaments. It's 16 straight tournaments where he saw action on the weekend now for Zanotti. Grades out well in par 5 scoring, driving accuracy, 2 of the key components that made up the model this week. Showed up well in the late Spanish doubleheader we had in last year's, tail end of 2021. 12th place finish at the Open de España, followed up with a top 5 finish in Valderrama. So plenty to suggest that he likes this part of the world. Obvious credentials here as well, given his course history. Runner-up finish to his name, both in the Open de España and the Q School. So again, starting to really see these form lines, see these course history lines, see these stats lines that start to suggest that Zanotti is definitely worth a look in at 66-1. Looping back on precision over power element, he's top 5 in driving accuracy in 5 straight events now. So you can see a bit of a running theme through the golfers that I have selected, including the last 2 that will make up my card as well. But I have put a lot of weight into the accuracy, provided I'm seeing some elements in the rest of their game as well that backs up that you can be as accurate as you'd like off the tee, but if you're not dialed in elsewhere, it makes no difference. Outside of that, 5 straight events, grading out number 1 in the field, including Dubai Desert Classic and one of the events at Ras Al Khaimah in terms of the accuracy off the tee. One slight reservation would be the rust factor. So he is coming in off a 6-week layoff, but I don't believe that that's going to play too much of a role with Zanotti. I've seen other instances where he's coming in off a break and ended up with top 10 finishes on his resume. A lot in his locker to have him onside coming into this week's tournament. So my third selection is Fabrizio Zanotti at 66-1. We get into triple-digit numbers then, and they served us well last week with Cockerell, but we're going back to the board this week with Francesco Laporta, 125-1. Off the back of 2 missed cuts, that's probably put him at an attractive price point for me. He grades out 10th in the field in par 5 scoring. His top 10 grades in a number of recent tournaments for driving accuracy as well, including 2nd in the field at the Portuguese Masters, 4th on the most recent Ras Al Khaimah event as well. Putter really can be hot and cold when it comes to Francesco Laporta. Back-to-back poor showings with the flat stick, but at the My Golf Life Open, he did gain 4.75 strokes with the putters, so and also had the best putts per GIR numbers for that week as well. So he is capable of getting it going. It's just fairly erratic outside of when he does get it together. Spain Hole School memories for Laporta, not least his Challenge Tour Grand Final victory back here in 2019. He's also got Q School outings here in 2015 with a T13 finish. We have some familiarity with the course. Laporta, for me, it's an inflated price given the couple of missed cuts, but I'm happy to take a stab on the Italian for this one at 125-1. And my final card, and it is a long shot. It's a proper bomb. It is Ashley Chesters. So for me, seeing 250-1 with DraftKings Sportsbook for Ashley Chesters, yet he has the number 1 grade in this field for accuracy off the tee. Now, I've caveated that, and I've said it already, that there is a case to be made that he has to show other signs of his game. So if you're just accurate off the tee, but you're not dialed in with the irons, or the flat stick is horrible, it's not going to have me enough to be backing him. But Chesters, he has some other stuff in his locker that I like as well. So 250-1 was far too big. Get some of that if you still can with DraftKings Sportsbooks. The quality in terms of the accuracy side of things, that served them up well before on Spanish tracks. Using under the CA Masters, the Valderrama event, as a potential course comp. Chester's 12th place finish in 2017 there, and a T4 to his name in 2018. Made the weekend last year too at Valderrama, finishing just outside the top 20. So that classical tree line type track requires a little bit more navigation, seems to suit Chesters. A couple of Q School outings around this course as well, so he has familiarity on his side, including a 16th place finish on his last appearance back in 2016. Coming off the back of a solid showing last week on his way to a T23, and he has top 10 this year already, just before Christmas this season already on the DP World Tour at the Shorten Joburg Open event. 250-1, it's far too big, considering the course experience is there, considering he has the accuracy in abundance and solid form lines and respected form lines when it comes to Spanish soil. So for me, 250-1, Ashley Chesters rounds out my betting card. Onto the DFS side of things then, 9K and above range, I'm taking Adrian Otaegul at 10,300, Rasmus Højgaard 9,900, and Bernd Wiesberger at 9,700. Wiesberger, he's been 10K plus in a number of tournaments recently when he's in the DP World Tour field. as I touched upon in terms of the betting portion side of things, he was getting to that price point at 30 to 1 where, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a little nibble. He's down to 22 to 1 on DraftKings now. I'm not going to have some of that. But in terms of the DraftKings pricing, DraftKings still have him down there at 9,700. And I think it's worth a little bit of equity in Bernd Wiesberg with that in mind. Rasmus Højgaard let us down last week, started out stellar, faded as the weekend went on. Really, really poor round 3 from memory. So whilst it looked great for a while, sitting 4 under, looked like that top 20 finish was going to cash in our best bets, he faded down the weekend. I'm going to take on Ryan Fox as my fade in the 10k or 9k and above range, 9,300 for Ryan Fox. If accuracy is at a premium this week, then Fox grades out amongst the worst in the field. That's enough for me to stay clear. Certainly has the length to overpower the par 5s, but I'm just not convinced the course management is going to be all there for Fox. But I am a little bit wary of the 4th place finish at the Andalusia Masters last year. The 8k range for me then, Mikko Korhonen at 8,500, Jason Scrivener at 8,300, and JB Hansen 8,100 are the guys that I'm gravitating towards in the 8k range. And Aussie in the Nut Hut, he beat me to it with Jason Scrivener coming off that 10th place finish last week at the Zurich Classic in the team event, showing some recent form on the DP World Tour as well, has course history around here, which helps. So yeah, Scrivener 8,300 stood out for me. My fade is going to be Haotong Lee. Little bit under the radar last week for Lee. 6th place finish, shooting a 64 and 67 on the weekend. So that's positive in terms of coming into this one. But he isn't the most accurate off the tee. There's an over-reliance on the putter to get him out of jail. And it's probably the one thing that I can't see him replicating is his strokes gained putting numbers last week were particularly eye-catching. I don't think that's going to be enough of a combination this week to see him compete up the top, but I would like to see Haotong Lee overall perform well, but I'm going to fade him in that 8k range. 7k range for me, Tom Lewis 7,500, Siwon Kim at 7,300, and Fabrizio Zanotti 7,100. Kim faded him last week. I felt those back-to-back wins on the Asian Tour. We had the step up in class. He had to get a bit acclimatized to Europe. I think now that he's got that under his belt and his price point has dropped down again, we're now looking at him in a different light. He's been in Spain now for 3 weeks. He's had a chance to acclimatize. He's played this course a number of times as well, which is eye-catcher enough in terms of the Q school level. So has that familiarity. He didn't have the same level of familiarity last week and was coming off a tour win. I think this week he can settle down, he can get into a groove, and at 7,300 in DFS, it's pretty appealing for someone who's won twice over the last month or so. My fade is going to be Shubhankar Sharma. I've been a big fan of Sharma. I've backed him a number of times on this show. Price point wise as well, and DFS is going to make appeal to the masses for me. 7,200 is a cheap price point. What gives me the disadvantage for Sharma this week, and it's why I'm going to fade him in DFS, there's no competitive course history. General Spanish form doesn't make much appeal outside of the third at the Madrid event last year, where he was in a particular hot spell. He's not replicating that recent form this time around. I'm happy to give him a miss, particularly with the consistent struggles he's had at Valderrama on that sort of classical tree line track, where he's had 3 consecutive miscuts there. I think it's a case of dusting off the rust this week now that he's back in the field, and maybe look to have an eye on him or one eye on him next week for the Betfred British Masters. 6k range then is Francesco Laporta at 6,900, Sebastian Soderberg at 6,800, and Ashley Chester's at 6,600. Soderberg's the other one that makes it in there. He's got course history, terribly inconsistent at times, but has the credentials to go well in that 6k range. I think he should be up in the 7k range, so a bit of value for me there. I was supposed to put together a best bet, and I didn't, so I'm actually going to do this one right while I'm on the show now. I'm going to have a quick look at anything that is eye-catching or anything that I have already had a bet on. It's not the worst scenario or time to load it up. So I'm just going to have a look at Data Golf in the background here. I'm going to pull up their scratch tool feature. Definitely worth looking at investing in this if you guys haven't already. I'm going to drop down to the 3 balls and matchups. I'm going to have a little look at who is paired up on the 72-hole matchups, and also have a look at some of the top 20s. So if we look at the card at the minute and who I've put up already, interesting to see Rasmus Højgaard on Data Golf's numbers as a plus 137 dog to Pablo Larrazabal. They're both priced up at minus 110 either side at the minute on Bet365, that is. I'll just drop down again. Interesting as well that been a decent move on Bet Chris for Adrian Otaegul over Richard Bland. That probably makes some appeal. I can see FanDuel minus 118 for that matchup. No surprise to see Victor Perez over Hao Tong Lee. Sometimes you can't force these things. You can't find the bets if they're not jumping off the page at you. I'm going to have a look though. Probably at Jordan Smith because he's sitting as a dog to Pablo Larrazabal. There's going to be a lot of appeal last week over Larrazabal's showing. It's a different makeup this week, a different course. You're coming off a win. Jordan Smith for me is probably more suited to the course. That one is certainly drawing my eye. I look down as well. Let's have a look, see who Mikko Korhonen is matched up with. Jason Screener, who I like. And he's a heavy favourite, certainly on Bet Online and Chris over Matty Smith. So no value there. Let's have a look as well. We've got Zanotti on our card. Yeah, I like this one actually. Zanotti minus 129 Bet Chris. Bit of value for me there, actually. Yeah, I'm going to put that up as my best bet. There you go. A bit of a live selection. I'll run it through just to confirm here on the model side of things. Yeah, minus 138 would be my fair price. We're minus 129 with Bet Chris. Bet Online have it minus 135. Pinnacle have it minus 134. But I'm going to put up Fabrizio Zanotti as my best bet this week. I'll dig a little bit more and put some more selections into the Nut Hut as well before we draw out and kick off the event tomorrow. So that's it for this week, guys. It is a interesting card. Next week, we are for the Betfred British Masters. I'm actually going to try and line up a couple of guests. Why not have 2 guests next week to join me? Let's put it on and possibly have a live feed. A little bit of a higher status in terms of the tournament next week, the Betfred British Masters. But that's it for me this week, guys and girls. Best of luck. Let's see some green screens and some winning tickets at the betting window. Back to work for me, fellas. Cheers.